So my name is Paul Byer. I'm the director of the festival, and we are going to be honored today to have Mr. Jigar Shah speak with Devin Welch of Sun Tribe Solar in this keynote luncheon on renewable energy. So for those of you that have been here at TomTom, I know many of you have probably been to the conference across the street. We're all about celebrating the city of Charlottesville and inspiring conversations about future industries that are going to define this city and really take us into the future. So, again, for some of you that are you don't have a direct eyesight to Jigar and Devin, again, please accept my sincere apologies. I think this lunch exploded a little bit more than it was intended to. But they're here, and we're just thrilled to have you join us. I'll introduce Devin real quick. Devin is the co-founder of Sun Tribe Solar. He has been instrumental in putting this entire energy program together. And just thank you so much for your help with TomTom and for your commitment to renewable energy into our community. So everyone, please a big hand for Devin and for Jigar.
Thank you, everybody. A couple more thank yous to run through. I want to thank the Downtown Grill, of course, for hosting us and giving us lunch today. Also want to thank TomTom Festival. Paul has a lot of places to be today. They have been an amazing partner in hosting this conference within the festival. For those who aren't familiar with TomTom, TomTom celebrates innovation. They have a couple of different summits. We're part of the Entrepreneurship Summit, which is called the Founders Summit, which is today, and then they also have a Hometown Summit, which celebrates civic entrepreneurship. But both incredible endeavors, and Charlottesville is very honored to have that contribute to our community. I also want to thank the Charlottesville Renewable Energy Alliance for making this lunch possible, so they're the sponsors of this lunch. The Charlottesville Renewable Energy Alliance is comprised of 8 different renewable energy companies that are all here in Charlottesville, and it's really dedicated to the mission of establishing Charlottesville as the renewable energy hub of the Southeast. And I think, as evidenced by the conference this morning and the conversations that we're having here, that we're really moving in that direction. And want to thank everybody for contributing to that mission. And then lastly, I want to thank Jigar Shah for taking time out of his day to come here and join us. Thank you so much. We're really excited to have you.
I'm honored to be here.
So no introduction is necessary, but Jigar, of course, is a luminary in the clean energy space. He was the founder of Sun Edison, previous CEO of the Department War Room, and is now president of Generate Capital. And so Jigar has really been a driving force. You've been a driving force for renewable energy, not just in the U.S., but around the world. And I think one of the talents that you bring that's so unique is your ability to see further on the horizon than the leaders. And that is a superpower that we're going to attempt to tap into today. So the topic of the conversation today is the energy endgame. Where are we going? Where are the trends leading us in the long term? And so we're really excited to sort of explore what you see this all ending up as, the efforts of everybody in this room. Before we sort of get into that, I thought we'd take a quick step back, since we have a time machine here today, and rewind and ask you, 20 years ago when you were looking at this space, and where we are today, is there anything that really surprises you about where we are today?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. I actually have been to Charlottesville many times just because you guys are a hub of innovation. I really appreciate all the good work all of you do here to continue to promote this. 20 years ago, I think my wife and my friend Stephanie were in grad school together at the University of Maryland, and I think that there was always this optimism around what was possible. Right? If you remember 20 years ago, we were talking about the dot-com bubble. We were all using Yahoo and Hotbot and all sorts of stuff. And I think people really thought that everything was possible. And I think when you worked in our industry, what you realized was everything was possible, but it wasn't actually being done. Right? I mean, so Chattanooga had one electric bus. You know, this group had like one solar project that they were sort of touting as their, you know, like sort of statute to sustainability. But people weren't actually being employed by our industry. People weren't actually, you know, like moving capital. And, you know, I think that there was a lot of optimism on what was possible, but there was still like a really big question mark around whether, you know, the policymakers and others were actually going to pursue implementation, right? And so around 1998 is when Japan actually unlocked the market, right? Japan was the one who, you know, like after Reagan shut down the tax credits in the 80s, said, we're going to start up the solar industry again. And they had this huge program, and Germany followed them, and then, you know, the state of California and others followed suit. But yeah, I think we were all sort of theoretical and hopeful, but not, you know, really sure how it was going to happen 20 years ago.
Is the ecosystem now more robust than you anticipated?
Oh yeah, and it was always something that we knew was going to happen. I mean, the thing about the solar industry, I was on the board of the Maryland, DC, Virginia Solar Energy Association, and this was 1999, 2000, 2001. I think there was 8 of us. We'd meet at like the Audubon Center. We'd like, you know, all bring our own sandwich, and you know, it was fun, right? We'd like, you know, we'd talk about, you know, how great it's going to be when everything comes back. But what you figured out was there were people since the 70s who've been working 2 part-time jobs to support their solar habit, right? That's been happening for a long time, and not just here, but in every country around the world that I've been to, right? And I've gone to countries where they're like, oh yeah, I started dabbling in solar in the 70s or the 80s, and I always knew it was going to come back, but I couldn't get a job, and so I decided to go to a professor at this university, and I've been sort of working for a while. So there were all these people that were ready to jump in once there was like something to jump onto.
Yeah. And are we there now to see that happen?
Well, we're not only there now, we're the dominant force, right? I mean, when you think about, I mean, just for everybody to understand, because I think that this just doesn't get reported on. So last year, 50% of all electricity added to the grid in any country globally was solar. Not solar, wind, renewables, whatever, just solar. Right? So 50%, think about that. That's $200 billion last year that was invested in solar, such that India is now like the #3 market in the world, China is the #1 market in the world, we're #2, many European countries, Brazil, Colombia, Costa Rica, everyone's on board. I mean, this is not a small endeavor anymore. We're now the dominant force around the world, and we're even the dominant force around innovation. So that when you think about who is leading the charge on battery storage, or who's leading the charge on electric vehicles, or who's leading the charge on all these other sectors, it's people who work for the solar industry that are leading the charge on all that stuff, right? Or it's people who decide to put solar on their roof are the ones who are the first ones in line to buy an electric car.
So let's take that trend out and move far into the future, say 20, 25 years in the future. When you look at, and I want to look at that sort of landscape, the energy landscape in, say, 2050 through a couple of different lenses, but let's take the first lens of technology. Okay? When you look at the generation energy mix, is there a technology that wins out? Is it solar?
Well, I certainly don't hope that it's solar. I mean, solar is one component of a broad, diverse energy mix, right? So I hope it's wind and geothermal and biomass and nuclear and lots of other clean energy technologies, right? So I think solar paved the way for everyone else. I mean, we're the ones who bring all of this consumer passion, right? Like, so when, you know, when somebody does something stupid at the state legislature, it's not all the hydro people that show up with picket signs, it's the solar people that show up with picket signs, right? It's not the energy efficiency people who show up with, like, you know, a bunch of, like, sort of, you know, like, you know, citizens from their community. It's the solar people who show up, right? And so we've paved the way for everyone else to follow, right? And so a lot of the disruption in the way the electric utility industry works, the way that the laws of the country are run, the way Goldman Sachs participates in funding renewable energy, really it was led by solar and the wind industry, and the rest of these industries are now like using those tools to grow themselves.
Okay. And so if there is a diversified energy mix that's going to exist in, say, 2050, are fossil fuels still a part of that? Or, I mean, there's still fossil fuel infrastructure that's being built today. Is that going to become stranded assets on utility technology?
Well, the fossil fuel industry, to me, will just change radically, right? So, like, right now, think about what we do, right? As cavemen, we decided to, like, burn wood for basic things, and one day we realized, well, that doesn't take us very far. It's not very smart. You know, we should, like, you know, burn coal instead. And then we went to oil, and then we went to natural gas. And now we're all saying that just burning stuff is not like what a modern society does. Right? We shouldn't just sit around and burn stuff just because we're all pirates. Like, you know, we should do something more innovative with it. Like, so, you know, coal has a really rich sort of, you know, complex chemical formula associated with it, right? There's a lot of stuff that you can do with algae and biotech and other things to turn coal into useful products. The same thing's true with natural gas. Like, we can use it to turn it into fertilizer. We can use it to turn it into lots of other things, right? So I don't think the fossil fuel industry goes away. I think we just stop using it to just burn, and, you know, which is by far the lowest use case for that fuel anyway, right? So I think a lot of entrepreneurs here and other places will figure out better and higher uses for it than, you know, burning it. And the side effect of burning it is obviously climate change and a lot of the health impacts that people face, etc. So we like to avoid those as well. So look, I think that's clearly going away. The coal industry has accelerated the retirements of their power plants under the Trump administration than what we even had in the Obama administration. So the notion that it's coming back is crazy. And I was like at a hotel on Tuesday night, and my copy of USA Today on the cover had like sort of the death of coal on the front. So like it wasn't like Popular Science or Science Magazine, it was like USA Today that's pronouncing this, right?
So in terms of fossil fuels being burned for generation, if natural gas, coal, you know, we had Stephen Coughlin earlier today tell us all about storage and how the incredible inroads and influence it's making in the space. Is storage what sort of puts an end to natural gas infrastructure in terms of electricity?
It depends on the audience you talk to, right? I mean, the answer is no. Like, storage and natural gas are not the same thing, right? I mean, like, natural gas is being used today in incredibly inefficient ways for peaker plants. So there are a lot of peaker plants that run literally 50 to 150 hours a year total, but you put all this steel in the ground anyway. Yes, storage is way more cost-effective than a peaker plant that runs 50 to 150 hours a year. But storage is not a power generation source. It's a medium by which to store power. And, you know, electricity is the largest supply chain in the world. It doesn't have a way to store its medium, right? So, like, if you think about agriculture, you have corn inside of those, you have all sorts of grain elevators, you have ways of storing this. You look at, like, gasoline and diesel, you have, you know, tank farms that store fuel, right? So electricity needs storage because it just makes the entire system run more efficiently, right? And so basically, natural gas was a hack in the 1990s because as air conditioning started taking off, people said, well, we need more flexible power grid to be able to handle air conditioning, and they hacked it with natural gas peaker plants. But in fact, they should have just put in storage back then, and we're now getting around to doing it the right way.
In terms of storage's role in the future, who ends up owning that storage that is provided?
Well, the utility company should own it, right? I mean, I don't know if they will own it, but, like, I mean, if you talk to MIT or you talk to, like, you know, all these other groups that study storage, like 19 different value streams for storage, 17 of them actually flow through to the utility company. Only 2 of them flow through to the customer. So the notion that, like, the customer should pay for storage and then give the other 17 value streams to the utility for free is sort of dumb, right? And that is what we're doing right now, just because that's the way the sort of system is set up. But I do envision that at some point the, you know, influences of the world and others will convince the utility commissions to let the utility companies to rate base storage, because it's 90% cheaper than rebuilding our transmission lines and our distribution substations and other things to meet the same service levels.
And if the floodgates do open to something like that does occur, do you foresee material constraints constraining that market, and there's a huge amount of storage that would be necessary?
You mean like cobalt from the Democratic Republic of the Congo or something?
Still waiting on you.
Look, I mean, one thing I'm very concerned about is us jumping to all these conclusions before it's a problem, right? Like, it's amazing to me, there was a book that was written one of the worst books I've seen in a long time. Vernon Severum, who's like at the Council on Foreign Relations, who basically wrote a book calling for how solar is going to have all these problems once it reaches 25% of the grid, right? And I was like, we're at 2% of the grid. So like, let me get to 10% of the grid, and then we can worry about all the problems that we're going to cause when we're 25% of the grid. And I think battery storage is the same. Like, battery storage is in its infancy. And I think the notion that we need to like start talking about how bad all these battery companies are because they're using phenols, or how bad all these other companies are because they're using all these materials. We have a very robust process by which to do energy research, right? I mean, when talking about 20 years ago, I mean, I was working with Sandia National Laboratories then on vanadium redox batteries and zinc air batteries and nickel iron batteries. There's lots of chemistries that we're all looking to use. We just happen to be using lithium ion because the cell phone industry and the laptop industry decided to use lithium ion batteries. So there's gigafactories in China and Japan that make those batteries. So Elon Musk was like, well, crap, I might as well use this stuff because it's available. And then he decided to build a gigafactory in Nevada, and Panasonic's running that. So I don't think anyone woke up one morning and said lithium ion is the only battery technology that we're going to use in the whole world. It just happened to be the one that was already at scale. And all the other technologies now have a big industry to sell into. And I'm sure that they'll all catch up to lithium ion over the next 5-10 years.
Okay, that's a short time horizon, in 5 years.
The technology's all mature. I mean, we started deploying vanadium redox batteries in the 90s, right? So they have data to support being deployed at scale. It's just that, like, there's no gigafactories producing them, right? LTO batteries was a lithium, titanium, or something oxide. Like, there's lots of technologies that have been around for years, and they're being made in a batch fashion. There's no gigafactory making them, and so they're really expensive.
Another kind of forward-thinking question. Yesterday, there was a machine learning conference in the same space that we shared for a clean energy conference today. Australia put it on. Thank you for that. I'd be really interested to hear what you think through artificial intelligence and machine learning, what role you think that plays in the grid of the future.
Well, I mean, I think it plays a central role in the grid of the future. I think the challenge is not AI. I mean, our stuff is stupidly easy, right? Just to give you guys an example of what we do and what we're talking about here, right? Like, this is not me getting like a virtual assistant to like book my calendar. Like, that's really hard, actually, right? Like this is Nest thermostats actually getting paid to change the temperature of your home by 2 degrees when you're not even paying attention to load level grid, right? That's all this is, and they can do that right now. The reason they don't do it is because no utility company wants to pay them to do it. In fact, there was a Federal Energy Regulatory Commission technical conference this week that talked about why they're not paying them to do it, right? And the utility companies are like, oh, this is going to create rolling blackouts if anybody gets to get paid instead of us. And public service commissions were saying, well, we don't want anyone to be able to do anything unless the utilities tell us that it's okay. And then, all these like arguments back and forth. But our stuff is stupidly simple, right? Like, I mean, it's just amazing to me how complicated people want to make our stuff into. But like everything that machine learning and AI is doing now, like ending hate crimes and hate emails on Facebook, that's hard, right? I get it. I mean, clearly it's hard because Zuckerberg hasn't done anything about it yet. But our stuff is super easy, right? I mean, it's like I have apps on my phone already where Verizon lets me like unlock and lock my door remotely, right? That's the extent to how complicated our stuff has to be, right? So what's holding us back is really just the electric utilities are like, wait a second, this is going to make this way more efficient. This is going to make like electricity rates go down. Wait, does this affect how much profit I'm going to make? Wait, until I sort out that answer, we should say that there's something wrong with doing this until like I figure out how much money I'm going to make.
Is there a way that we as an industry can gain access to that data to help make that case for them? Because there's a core set of data that really utilities get to control.
Yeah, unfortunately it comes from regulatory processes, right? So So there's a thing called DERs, right? That's what the conference was last week, and it stands for Distributed Energy Resources, right? And in general, that's what all this is encompassed by. When a utility company says this substation no longer is serving the needs of its people because we built it in the 1970s and everyone has air conditioning and so it needs to be upgraded, right? There's a process by which Nest and other people should be able to come and say, well, we can actually extend the life of that substation by 20 years without you upgrading it right now, and that would be cheaper, right? Today, there's no process to do that. So DC, for instance, just introduced legislation this week to basically just force Pepco to put out every single one of these opportunities to bid so that all the entrepreneurs can actually, pitch. Now, Pepco doesn't have to agree with what was pitched, and they don't certainly have to like pick one of the winners, but they do have to reveal all the data by which people can pitch. And that, I think, alone will, get everyone more recognition of the process, right?
Well, as long as we're talking about data and machine learning, I'd love to hear your opinion on kind of the buzzword this year, which is blockchain. Right? Is there actually a legitimate role for blockchain finance within the industry moving forward?
No.
Great.
I mean, yeah, it's like this is a hype cycle like one I've never seen, and yeah, if you own Bitcoin, good for you. I hope you bought it for $400, but I don't think that you know why it goes up or down, and I don't think I know why it goes up or down. By the way, blockchain was invented 20 years ago, so there's nothing new about blockchain. Blockchain is extraordinarily complicated, right? So the way blockchain works is you basically have peer-to-peer validation of transactions. So, so several other people have to say, yes, this transaction belongs in the ledger. That's super hard to do, right? I mean, we have millions and millions of transactions a day, right? I don't know how many peer-to-peer people are going to sit by their laptop and go, yeah, that one's approved, yeah, that one's approved. I mean, I just think that, and the amount of energy that blockchain uses, right? If for 1 gigabyte of data that I stream on my phone takes something in the order of 40 kilowatt hours of power. Right, from the data centers that support it, etc. Blockchain takes something in the order of 150 kilowatt hours of power for this stuff, right? So for each Bitcoin, right? And so, I just think that, do I think that the idea behind blockchain will unlock new and better ways of doing things? Absolutely. But the notion that blockchain or the internet or AI or whatever else is going to solve the world's problems is crazy.
I heard once somebody say, if you can do something with blockchain without using blockchain, you're much better off not using blockchain.
Yeah, or at the very least, do something with blockchain without mentioning blockchain.
Yeah. So this year, solar was in the news quite a bit after a pair of hurricanes crashed into the Caribbean, completely devastating the electrical system down there. I saw firsthand telephone poles snapped in half, complete and utter destruction. What that's done is it's really brought this concept of reliability front and center stage. And so the question I pose to you would be, as we think about how we can design and bring the future, what does real reliability look like? What are the steps we should take?
Well, so yeah, no, I think what's happened in Puerto Rico and what's in U.S. Virgin Islands and continues to happen there breaks my heart. I mean, I think these are all Americans first and foremost, and I certainly think that we should treat our American brothers and sisters better than we have. Look, I think that the solar industry was not ready for Katrina, for instance, right? We just weren't mature enough to matter, right? We weren't really even mature enough to matter for Haiti, right? When Haiti occurred, the State Department pushed propane from Venezuela and LNG from the Dominican Republic to solve that. But what happened out of Haiti was that even though we weren't prepared, the vast majority of the remote villages in Haiti are now being run using microgrids for renewable energy because no one ever bothered to extend the grid to the rest of the people who live there. And so, So now that this has happened in Puerto Rico and in the Virgin Islands, we're still not ready, right? To be clear, I mean, companies like Apex here in Charlottesville or Invenergy out of Chicago or others who are, have been doing things for a long time, their investors have made a return, etc. These are the kind of companies that set up corporate foundations, AES influences here. Those are the kinds of companies who actually have like 40 full-time people who can be redeployed to sort of help solve these problems, right? Most of the companies in our industry are still growing at like 40% a year. They're hiring like they could never hire before. Like it's hard for them to free up the resources to be able to support an endeavor as philanthropic as what's happening in Puerto Rico. Even with that though, I'm really impressed by our industry. I mean, as soon as those hurricanes hit, we shipped, I think, pretty much all of the available inventory in the United States to Puerto Rico for solar lanterns, solar chargers, solar generators. All of that stuff got down there, which really helped people a lot on communications and other types of very critical needs. There were a lot of folks who moved down there. PJ Wilson, who's basically moved from Missouri to run the Puerto Rico Solar Energy Association, and is really coordinating all of the resources that are being donated by over 380 companies in the solar industry have donated hundreds of millions of dollars worth of equipment. Tesla has done a great amount of work there. So I think our industry has shown how much we can do there, and we've been hugely involved in the politics around microgrids. AES put forward a plan of basically interconnected microgrids to run Puerto Rico, which was far more resilient than what they were looking at before. And AES has been there for years because they've got a coal plant down there that they've run for years. And so I think we've made a huge impact in that market, but our industry is still so young. Like, what I tell people is you gotta be on like second generation money before all this other stuff happens, right? Like it's just really hard when the entrepreneur is still running the shop.
If we could advise, since the political process of trying to be ready for these organizations to move forward, aside from sort of the obvious argument of infrastructure, is there a case to be made for distributed generation in terms of our ability to adapt and react?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give you an example. There's a company in Texas called Enchanted Rock. Enchanted Rock basically built EPA-compliant natural gas generators next to critical infrastructure, and then bid that capacity into the wholesale market, right? To provide capacity to the wholesale market to pay for it. One of their big clients is HEB. For those of you guys who don't know Texas, HEB is one of the largest grocery store chains in Texas. Every one of their facilities during Hurricane Harvey was up and running the entire time, right? And so because of that, HEB is like, well, that worked really well. We should put one at every single one of our grocery stores, throughout the state, right? And so that's happening, and now they're looking at saying, well, instead of using natural gas generators, now that battery storage has gotten so much more cost effective, maybe we should put in battery storage instead. And so I think people are recognizing the value of resilience. And they are recognizing the value of doing microgrids and other things. You're seeing a lot of buildings in New York City after Hurricane Sandy putting in microgrids as well, because all of the buildings that had combined heat and power were up and running during Sandy, the ones that didn't don't. And when you think about how much GDP, right, is being created by every one of those 68-story buildings in New York City, it far surpasses the $2 million it costs to put a microgrid, right? And so I think that's where we're headed, and we certainly have had these conversations with FEMA, we've had these conversations with, frankly, the UN, where, we're building solar projects now in refugee camps in Jordan and other places, because it's way cheaper than running those refugee camps on diesel.
So there's another type of reliabilities, it's been categorized more as sort of security, but it's the same challenge of reacting to a very different type of threat. So obviously, recently the FBI and Department of Homeland Security revealed that there was successful penetration of the electricity grid by Russian hackers, that there was for a period of time the capability to cause significant harm. As we think about how we design our electrical infrastructure moving forward, what should we do to guarantee that we can remain in service despite that threat?
So you know, the first thing we have to do, and I hate sort of using this narrative because it certainly doesn't suit me, but the first thing we have to realize is that people working in electric utility companies are not dummies, right? They care deeply about security and they work their ass off to make sure that we continue to get reliable electricity every day. So most of those stories just weren't true, right? So what Russian hackers were able to do was to get access to data that was available sort of offline. But like, for instance, all of our nuclear power plants are air-gapped. So there actually is no way for a Russian hacker to run a nuclear power plant remotely. Like there's none whatsoever. And so for people to suggest otherwise is just bad news reporting. And so we don't have that problem. I think, you know, there's a lot of issues with like Siemens in particular boxes that were hackable, and I think created a fix for them, and that's all they know about nationwide. I mean, I think it matters, and we have to care a lot. But like, if you talk to John Mullinoff, who used to run the firm, what he'll tell you, what he cares the most about is oil-cooled transformers and how easy it is to take one of those down with a shotgun. Right, like literally one shotgun, you take it down, and it's like, that scares him half to death, right? Like this Russian hacking stuff, the electric utility grid, I think, like, there are a lot of things the utility company does well, and figuring out how to like bureaucratically keep us safe on that stuff is one of the things we do really well.
So while we're talking about sort of envisioning a future energy ecosystem, what I thought would be an interesting exercise would be to talk about the different market players in that future energy ecosystem. So if it's 2050, what do utilities look like in 2050? There's a lot of conversations around the utility business. What is sort of a utility role moving forward?
Well, I mean, I do think that the distribution grid, right, which is the part that you really mean when you say utility, is the part that I think will be largely gone from where it is today, right? The transmission lines that move West Virginia power to Virginia, or, you know, Colorado power to California will continue to exist. It still makes sense to move power from windy areas to non-windy areas, or sunny areas to non-sunny areas, right? The part that won't exist in its current form is the neighborhood electricity grid that you have today, right? At some point, it's going to be more cost-effective, or just something I want to do, where I just buy the grid in my neighborhood and I supply the grid to my neighbors myself, right? Why? Because, like I live in Bethesda, Maryland, right? And until a few years ago, Bethesda used to have more power outages than anybody else in the United States of America, right? I think we average something like 8 days of power outages a year, right? And that's because Pepco just never trimmed the trees, and so every time there was a windstorm, we get power outages, right? And so you can imagine all of my neighbors spent $20,000 to put a diesel backup system in their yard, right? All of them. Some of them really can't afford to put one in, but did anyway, right? So they clearly cared enough about their family and the resiliency of, you know, like of their electricity to pay that cost. Now they're not paying the extra $500 a year to keep it maintained. So next time something happens, it won't work, right? But they paid the 20 grand, right? So you can imagine, like, when after the 2008 financial crisis, the era stimulus bill put a bunch of money into counties. Several of the counties in Virginia used that money to create resiliency plans for the county. And at the time, they thought about financial resiliency, not necessarily terrorism resiliency or whatever. But every one of the plans says that they want all their infrastructure to be provided locally, right? It just came out of the plan. Like, it wasn't something that anyone like told them to do. They just said, we want all of our water and sewer to be processed locally. We want all of our electricity to come from local generation. We want all of like this to come locally. Why? Because they get the fact that they're vulnerable when something's coming in from 200 miles away, right? So I just think that at some point, the people who live in every county and every town are going to be so frustrated with their utility that they're going to say, we want control of our grid ourselves. Right? And you see that in California, where over 40% of the population now is under a community choice aggregation scheme, which is basically the same thing. And almost 100% of the state will be under a CCA by the next 5 years or 7 years. And so that's because they all want to, run for the board and get on the board and do their own thing and like make decisions themselves. They don't want to go to Dominion or Pepco or whatever to get their permission to do stuff, right? And so that's definitely going to happen. Like over the next 25 years, all of those distribution grids are going to be run by local communities, and it's going to be the best thing that ever happened to our grid. And because once you do that, then everyone can innovate to their heart's content. They want to run a biomass plant locally, they'll do that. They want to run their hydro dams locally, they'll do that. If they want to do anaerobic digesters from food waste, they'll do that. Everyone who has a good idea locally will be able to pursue those ideas without bureaucracy telling them how bad it is.
Fantastic. So if utilities are going to be giving up that generation function, and they're going to be giving up the distribution function, that leaves a pretty small piece of the pie there in transmission, but theoretically RTO is a high, so it's where is the space for utilities if they're interested in growing their business?
Yeah, it's shrinking.
Just period.
Yeah, it kind of sucks. No, look, I mean, we've already had this before, right? When Verizon was formed, right? I mean, many of us, I think, old enough to remember the 1996 Telecom Act, right? It was New York Bell, it wasn't Verizon, right? And so New York Bell changed the name to Verizon. 96% of all their revenues was regulated, right? And we had phone service. Remember? I don't know if you remember, but I remember I had a girlfriend that lived two towns down from me, and I couldn't call her because then it would show up on my parents' phone bill, and all that craziness, right? Remember that? So that all went away, and Verizon now is 96% unregulated. They're being forced by the FERC to keep some of these copper lines open in West Virginia and some of the places where they haven't actually had enough cell phone tower coverage. But that is what happens, right? And so some of the electric utility companies will invest in the future, and then we'll figure out how to invest in all these deregulated companies and figure out how to make that transition. And then all of the other local bells that you don't hear about anymore will be gone, right? And that is what happens when innovation comes through, right? Is that one thing that I find fascinating that most people don't think about is when I was counting my pennies around the phone calls I was making, my bill was $20 a month. It was so cheap. I don't remember how cheap it was in the 90s. Electricity bills were so cheap, and then remember you had to dial 1010, 222, whatever, to get an even cheaper rate. Today I pay $70 a month for my cell phone bill, and I am ecstatic. Right? I am not mad at that because I believe that they're providing me additional services that I want to pay for. Right? That's the same thing with the electric utility grid. If someone were to say to you, you're a residential homeowner, you really want resilience, I'll pay for the diesel generator in your backyard. You don't have to put up the 20 grand. I'll pay for it. You just pay an extra $20 a month on your bill, and we'll pay for that and we'll provide you that service. People would love that, but they don't do that. Batteries, sure, all these things. There are a lot of things an electric utility company could do, and they could even help me with the app I have from Verizon that connects, that locks my doors and tells me if my windows are shut, right? They could do that too, right? And they don't. So it's just one of those things where, yes, all of them today have the potential to survive tomorrow if they actually provide me services that I want to buy. If they don't provide me services that I want to buy and they continue to be a commodity supplier, well then, I'll buy something else that provides me more value.
Makes sense. Let's switch gears to corporations right now. So obviously corporates have been a big driver in the marketplace, and plus that Dr. Valentine's is going to speak in later about their role in the market forward. Wanted to understand from your perspective whether or not they will continue to be a big market driver, or are they just getting us through the hurdle for consumers? What's their role moving forward?
Yeah, so I think that, this all started sort of 20 years ago when corporations would buy racks, right, renewable energy credits, and Whole Foods would say, I bought a bunch of racks, and now all the power that we have is green. And you would say, well, that seems a little hokey to me. I kind of come here and I buy this groceries and I do this stuff, and are you really telling me you're like powered by renewable energy. And you find out that they bought all the racks from like some sawmill in Georgia that basically was already burning their sawdust to create electricity. They didn't need the racks. And so they were getting racks for like 0.002 cents kilowatt hour. And then they were like, oh, we should upgrade to wind. But the wind farms are the same. Like the wind farms weren't being built because of the racks. They were being built because of the wind PTC or other things. And so the wind farms started selling the racks at 0.002 cents kilowatt hour, right? And so eventually you're like, this stuff doesn't make any sense. Like I don't really feel like I should give this corporation loyalty because they bought a bunch of racks, right? Like I want them to prove to me that they did something progressive, proactive to actually make this happen, right? So the corporate PPA is saying to these wind developers, what happened was like all the state renewable portfolio standards were met early. Like we basically met all of them early. And so the wind developers were like, well crap, I got this wind farm and the utility doesn't want to sign a PPA with me, a power purchase agreement, because they've already met their requirements for wind. So a corporation said, well, I'll sign the PPA with you, and then why don't you sort of just sell the power in the wholesale market, and I'll true you up, right? So if the wholesale market doesn't compensate you enough to pay the bills to the bank, then I'll give you some extra money to true you up, right? And then the corporation could really say, well, if it wasn't for me and my PPA, this wind farm would have gotten built, right? And so they do that, and you see that all the time. Like Apple is saying how awesome they are, Google's like, well, we're at 100% now, Microsoft's like, not to be outdone, and so they're out there, and Amazon's like, well, crap, I guess this is a thing now, so we should do it, and Facebook, and so everyone's in, right? And Walmart even came in on it, which is pretty awesome, and now you've got a company called Level 10 that's basically saying, well, Microsoft, why don't you only do 80% of it, and the other 20% I'll sell to small businesses that want to do it. So it's kind of cool, right? And so, and it makes a ton of sense, right? Like, economically, I think some of these guys may end up paying a premium to what they're currently paying on wholesale markets, but they don't know that now. Like, it depends on how the wholesale markets get transformed in the next 20 years. But they truly can say that without their commitment, that wind farm and that solar farm wouldn't have built, and that makes them feel good.
Absolutely. Certainly true here in Virginia. So we've got Microsoft, Amazon, Facebook, all announced big announcements in that space. How do we as an industry enable smaller companies? So the renewable energy targets amongst the Fortune 500 are amazing. And when we start penetrating further down that list, we're going to to secure those companies. How do we
smaller companies to do what?
To make similar kinds of investments in renewable energy. How do we create the financial structures that would enable participation?
So this is where the macro and the micro get a little bit like confusing. So on a macro basis, the United States of America needs, let's call it 20,000 megawatts of power plants to get built every year to keep us going, right? And then a coal plant retirements and other stuff, right? So as long as 100% of that is coming from clean stuff, I'm good, right? And so last year, natural gas actually went down, right? We burned about 2% less natural gas last year than we did in 2016. And so it became a higher percentage of the overall mix because there were like coal generators that retired and then we actually used less power. But in general, like natural gas went down, and so basically 100% of all new stuff that got added to the grid last year from a megawatt hour standpoint was renewables. Right? So as long as that happens and keeps happening forever, then we're good. Right? So we don't really have to help those small businesses from a macro climate change perspective. We just got to build 20,000 megawatts of good stuff every year. Right? Now, if we start with 20,000 megawatts of good stuff what the Dominion does with like Amazon, Walmart, Costco, Macy's, whatever, that's awesome, right? But at some point, those guys might get tapped out. And if those guys get tapped out, then we go the next layer down. We go to the hospital and say, hey, why don't you do this? And the city of whatever, why don't you do this? And then everybody else will go, right? And then after that, we'll go like, hey, why don't we go to Joe's Plumber? And Joe's Plumber will do it, and then it's all great, right? But it doesn't, it's not dumb for somebody who wants to build a $100 million wind farm to go to somebody who can provide a $100 million contract, and not to go to 10,000 businesses that are going to provide a $10,000 contract, right? That seems like a lot of work.
Sure. While we're talking about sort of the macro picture here, we'd love to hear your perspective on nation states and their role moving forward. So obviously huge players in the fossil fuel spaces. Saudi Arabia recently announced the $200 billion investment. $200 billion investment with SoftBank. So just would love to hear whether you see nation states. I mean, they're obviously already big players, but how do you see them jockeying to take the best advantage of this opportunity?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the first thing to realize is that nobody is doing this out of the goodness of their heart, right? Like, I find that it's fascinating to me how much I'm accused of being a tree hugger, and Stephanie knows better. The reason people are doing this is because it makes them a ton of money, right? So for Saudi Arabia, let's remember what's going on in Saudi Arabia, right? This is a place where they ousted a king. They got a new guy in. The new guy's son is like now the crown prince. And he's saying, I want to take Saudi Aramco public for $2 trillion, right? Now, Saudi Aramco is not worth $2 trillion. So, what is a crown prince to do? So you say, well, how do I make it worth more, right? So what they realized was Saudi Arabia burns 600,000 barrels a day of its own oil at $7 a barrel to produce electricity for its people, right? And someone said, you know what? We could sell that oil for $68 a barrel. We should stop burning it for $7 a barrel. Wouldn't that help Saudi Aramco be worth more money? Actually, I think that would. And so then they were like, well, we should do that. Well, how would we do that? What do we have in Saudi Arabia that could possibly place electricity? Oh, I think we have a lot of sun. So they said, well, SoftBank's got a bunch of money and they've invested in SoftBank's, big $100 billion fund. So SoftBank came in and, SoftBank has been pushing solar in Japan and India and other places, so it makes sense that they push it in Saudi Arabia. So if they do this, then Saudi Aramco will be worth about $250 billion more if they were to convert all of the 600,000 barrels of electricity that their oil that burn a day into electricity, into solar. So, it's not so dumb, right? And then the same thing's true with India. Everyone's like, oh, India, they're doing all the right things. No, they got crappy coal. India's coal is not really worth burning. It's like burning dirt. And so they're importing coal from Mozambique or Indonesia or Australia, and that kind of sucks. And then India has balance of payments issues because they don't need rupees, and then they need dollars to buy all their stuff because nobody wants to sell them coal in rupees. And so they're using all their hard currency for diesel, oil, natural gas, coal. And they're saying, well, why don't we produce the stuff locally and then use that hard currency to buy AI stuff and other things that would produce more economic development in our country. So I just think it's fascinating to me how, we're not smart. We're not doing anything that's actually worth a damn. We're just selling stuff to people who care about the planet and are tree huggers and whatever else. You don't get to $200 billion a year and 50% of all new global capacity additions by being tree huggers. You do it by being problem solvers for these nation states who are making these decisions.
When you see the different players in the international sphere sort of moving forward, where do you think sort of the grid of the future that you described, where do you see that manifesting itself first? Right? Is that a developed country that makes a significant capital investment? Is it a direct economy? Is it something like that, built-in infrastructure already in place?
Well, there's no such thing as a grid of the future, right? It's sort of like saying, where do you think organic food is going to go in the future, or local food is going to go? There's 800 different definitions for grid of the future, and they all depend, right? So yes, in Ghana or in Kenya or other places, there are a lot of villages who don't have a grid at all. So there are people building solar systems, connecting the grid with DC wires, so they're not even using AC, and then they're providing the power, and they've invented a new meter and all that stuff, which is great. In Texas, they've got people who basically have decided to put these natural gas generators as backup, and then they bid that capacity to the grid, and then it works so well with Harvey, they're like, actually, why don't we add a battery to it, and then put solar on a roof, and why don't we just turn that into a microgrid? So there's a lot of folks who now can snap their fingers and go off grid in Texas, So I guess that's a microgrid. And then you've got like university campuses. I don't know about Charlottesville, but like when I went to school at the University of Illinois, we had like a 50 megawatt coal plant that ran the whole university, and then we had district heating and easy heat and all that stuff. So a lot of those universities say, well, why don't we turn ourselves into a microgrid? And so each one of those are different microgrids, different nanogrids, different grids of the future. I don't know that any one of them can be defined as having a lot of commonality, except that they're local, right? And so, yeah, I think that's going to keep happening. And like, I'll give you an example. In New York, we did a request for proposals, and we got, I think, 117 proposals for microgrids. The folks who came out with the finish line of that, the average price per kilowatt hour for that hour was 9.5 cents a kilowatt hour coming out of the microgrid, right? So this is like starting with a clean slate, 9.5 cents a kilowatt hour. Just to put that in perspective for all of you, the average cost of power in this country is 12.2 cents a kilowatt hour, right? So that means the vast majority of people in this country could just unplug from the grid and just build a microgrid for 9.9 cents a kilowatt hour, right? And so, like, that is going to keep happening, right? Like, that is the economic reason why that is moving.
If that's already the case, why isn't it happening faster right now?
Because most folks don't believe me. I go into the, like, I literally go into the, like, factory and I say to the guy, you're paying 12 cents a kilowatt hour, I can sell you for 9.5 cents a kilowatt hour, I'll fund it, you can sign a power purchase agreement for the next 20 years. And they're like, well, that's not what my rep told me. Like, I don't think that's true. And I was like, well, okay, well, the guy across the street just did it, but like, well, but that guy's a rat bastard, so I don't really know that in that sense, right? So I just think it's too new, it's too early, and most of these people don't view themselves as like experts in evaluating microgrids, right? So they look at it and say, well, I don't know. So like, what's happening right now is a lot of like critical infrastructure is going microgrids. So like in Montgomery County, we've converted all of our police stations and fire stations and like emergency shelters to microgrids because we want to make sure they're not running next time the ratio goes by or whatever like weather event I've never heard of. And so that's happening now. And so as that happens, people are going to say like, oh, it's not so weird, it's not so unfamiliar, and so maybe I'll try it from now on forward.
What's the effect on ratepayers or rate base if you've got mass grid defection of these large players that become substantial revenues?
Well, it depends, right? And so on the one hand, people say it's going to be bad, right? Because if people leave the system, then, the rest of the communists that are left on the system are going to have to pay higher prices and stand in red lines and that'd be awful. But on the other hand, like, you actually don't need to invest any more in the infrastructure because if the infrastructure is not being used as much, then they don't have to upgrade transmission lines and distribution substations and kind of stuff. So now, as depreciation comes in, then they just will put more money at the door. So then they'll save money there, right? But also, it just depends on how fast I can convert everybody. So like, as someone's suffering, I'm like, hey, call 1-800 microgrid, and then we'll come in and give you a microgrid, right? And so like, I don't like. I think that this notion that we should all live without innovation because there's some scary vision that's been painted by the group that's going to be hurt the most by innovation, like, is not a persuasive argument to me.
Okay, so let's talk about innovation a little bit. I want to kind of explore the idea, is there an innovation deficit in terms of where we need to get right now? I think there's a couple of different lenses to look at that through. Maybe the first one would be the technology sort of landscape, right? To get where we need to get, kind of deep decarbonization, that's what the scientists are calling for. Are R&D budgets adequate currently?
They're exactly what we want them to be. So, look, we started this conversation with 1998, right? And what I thought was going to be happening. Today, we are still installing technology that was invented largely in the 70s, right? That's how long it takes for people to get comfortable with technology in this space. You can imagine if you live in Flint, Michigan, and somebody said, I just invented this new way of like taking your tap water and making it drinkable. You're not going to just say, well, we're going to stop shipping bottled water in Flint, Michigan and actually like put in this new innovation that's never been tested before, right? You're going to say, well, has it been used somewhere? How long has it been used somewhere? How many duty cycles has it gone through? Like 20 years later, you're like, okay, okay, fine, I guess that stuff really works, right? That's sort of how this works. I don't think we have a lack of innovation, we have a lack of deployment. When you think about how much innovation is happening in solar today, it's an enormous amount of innovation. Why? Because the solar market's $200 billion in size. So if you're innovative, you're creating a new innovation, you know that there's actually somebody who's waiting to buy it, right? Now, if you're innovating like wave technologies, which I know is a company local here or wherever else, the question is, like, once you actually come out the other end and you create a great product, is there someone waiting to buy that thing? I don't know, right? So then, like, if I'm an investor and I'm saying, well, should I fund that company? You think twice, because you're like, oh God, I wish there was a bunch of wave stuff happening with Wave 1.0, and then when Wave 2.0 came, that they replaced Wave 1.0. But if 1.0 is not even being deployed, then you're just a little nervous about putting money behind 2.0, right? So to me, there isn't a chicken and egg situation. There's just a chicken situation. It's like we need to deploy what we have right now at scale. I don't care what it is: electric vehicles, anaerobic digesters, wastewater treatment plants. Like, whatever it is that we have that's ready to go right now, we need to start deploying at scale. And then all the R&D people are going to say, well, that's us moving, so I actually want to work in that area to create a new development there that I can then put into that area, right? And so we just keep doing stuff back-assward. And it just bothers me to no end. Like, there's a bunch of people who's like, we should triple R&D budgets. Okay, well, who's against tripling R&D budgets? Like, it's like saying, who's against tripling the budget for playgrounds, or tripling the budget for swimming pools? All of us are for that. That's awesome, right? But then ultimately, it's like, are people going to use the playgrounds? Are people going to use the swimming pools? Have we actually figured out, like, who's going to use the R&D when it's ready? No. Well, then let's focus on who's going to use the R&D and get innovation deployed, and then R&D will become a lot sexier.
Sure. I think there's potentially a role for policy to play in that. Is there, when we talk about innovation, there's the business side innovation, but in terms of policy, we haven't had sort of cohesive national energy plan in decades, right?
No, we had one in 2002, written by George W. Bush and Dick Cheney, which actually was not bad.
Okay, so are we ready for an updated one? And if so, what would it look like?
We are ready for an updated one, but we don't like doing one. The last one we had before Dick Cheney did one was, I think, the 70s, right? So by Jimmy Carter, right? So people don't like putting stuff down on paper, right? Like, it's like, no one wants to piss anybody off, and so nobody wants to actually publish an energy strategy. But we have one now, right? I mean, I think our friends in AI and machine learning could calculate it for us. Like, we have state policy in every single state, and when you calculate all that stuff up together and divide by 2 and multiply by 3 and take it to the second exponent, then you actually have energy policy, right? That is our energy policy. In some states it's weird, like in Pennsylvania they think coal dust is renewable, and in some states it's straightforward, which is great. But we already have exactly what the blueprint is to make it work. In Virginia, the blueprint is, we're going to do another 5,000 megawatts of solar, which is awesome. And so each state has, it's called an integrated resource plan. Those resource plans are blueprints. You have them all together, and then you figure out what it is. It's just one of those things. In the United States, we outsourced all real infrastructure decisions outside of some transportation decisions to the states. So the states do their own planning. So that's where our plan is.
Has that balkanization into 50 different utility commissions, how's that affected the renewable energy movement today?
I think it's been awesome, right? I mean, a lot of people will hate it because they're like, oh, Jigar, if I could just get one law passed, that legislature would be great. But then Trump becomes president, and I'm like, this is freaking awesome. I'm so happy that he can't do anything at 50 state level, right? I mean, it's great. All he does is say, well, we need to, create a national security situation through Rick Perry to, say we need to protect our coal plants. That's not working. We've accelerated coal retirements under his presidency. So, I'm glad that Virginia state legislature is taking care of Virginia, and the Tennessee state legislature taking care of Tennessee, and every one of those people is like, hey, Jigar, when you put a $100 million solar farm in my county, as soon as you pass a law that allows me to. Oh, that's a problem? Yeah, let's fix it. And so it's great, So I don't think our industry has ever tried to do the tough work. I know Gary Horowitz is here at Soul Systems, and they've funded a lot of the work to do some of that work. And Francis is here, and Francis has been doing a ton of work in Virginia. And there's a lot of people here who all day long influence state legislatures, and it is exhausting. But when you have somebody who gets into the federal government who doesn't like our policy, you thank the Lord that you got a 50-state solution.
Sure. So when you kind of put all those trends together, I guess this is a pretty big question. When you put all the trends together, do we get there in time?
No. I mean, of course not. Look, I mean, that's like saying, 50 years on since, MLK's assassination and we saw racism. No, of course we haven't. Right? We work at it every day. Every one of us works hard every day. We figure out how to take our innovations and take it a step further, right? We figure out how to use PERPA. We figure out how to use renewable portfolio standards. We figure out how to use arguments around resiliency. We use whatever it is that we're doing. We've got in the solar industry alone 250,000 dedicated people. 1 out of every 50 jobs created in this country since the financial crisis was created in the solar industry. We have created more blue-collar jobs in this industry in the last 8 years than the home builder industry has done, right? The home builder industry started with 2 million people in 2008, and earlier 2.1 million people. We started with 25,000 people in 2008, and now we're at 250,000 people, right? I mean, that's amazing, and I'm so proud of that. The wind industry is the same, LED lighting, electric vehicles. You add all that together, we're 1 in 20 jobs since the financial crisis is in our industry. So we are kicking ass and taking names. It's amazing. Are we on track? Or is that curve bent in the right direction to get to where we want to go? It is not. Right? We all have to do way more to get to where we want to go. But I am inspired every day by all the people that are here, right, who are working tirelessly to make it happen. And I think that we have enough people power to get there. So, it keeps me optimistic.
All right. Inspiring words. Thank you. I think we have our marching orders. There's certainly some work ahead of us, and I think this is the room that can do it for Virginia to start. So, I want to thank you, Jigar, for your time today and your insight and wisdom as always. Challenging, thought-provoking. I think we're all excited to roll our sleeves and move the market forward. So, how about